I'd like to welcome everybody to the Tortoise and Hare Financial Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Leo. Joining me today is my co-host, Ryan Janot. Ryan, how are things going today?
Amazing. I think the fall is finally upon us, so time to get out the pumpkins and put out the scary stuff.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Looking forward to a lot of candies in the next couple of weeks. So we're actually really excited today because we have an announcement that we're going to be making later on in the episode. But to help us kind of lead to that announcement is our special guest, Stephanie Holmes-Winton, CEO and co-founder of CacheFlo Inc. Stephanie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks very much for having me.
Oh, our pleasure. And thank you for joining us today. And how are things out in beautiful Halifax, Nova Scotia?
Well, right now they're okay, but apparently we are headed for a tropical storm or some such thing over the Thanksgiving weekend. So hopefully it doesn't hit us too bad.
Yeah, hopefully not. Hopefully not. Well, again, thank you for taking the time today. We're going to probably start things off really with you sharing a bit about your background, letting people know, what your financial services journey was, and ultimately what led you to the creation of CacheFlo Inc., and also kind of sharing what CacheFlo Inc. is and how you help people. So maybe you can pick up from there.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I started my career, oh my goodness, how many years ago now? 22 years ago. 22 years ago, I became a financial advisor. So at that time, I was with Clarica, which became Sun Life. And then I moved to Manulife after a couple of years, mainly because they had their own bank. So when you're giving cash flow and debt advice, having more access to banking products was really helpful. And experts in lending was really helpful to have access to those folks. So I did that for about a decade, noticed that lots of people made great money. Almost nobody really knew where it was going, or they often felt like, oh, I'm working so hard that I don't feel like I'm getting the life I thought I would get from this money I'm earning. And I thought, there's a lot more financial professionals than me. There's no standardized process. There's no tools. There's not really much except finger wagging and putting people on budgets. And so I decided to sell my practice and start training financial professionals. And at the first training, somebody said, "Where's the software?" And I went, "I don't know. Right. I don't want to create software. I don't know how to do any of that." But it was very evident that we did need to create software. Mm-hmm. So we used to be called the Money Finder. We rebranded as CacheFlo back in 2018, but it's really the same process. So in 2013, we launched the designation, and a few months later, we launched the software. So today, CacheFlo provides financial education and tools to financial professionals around cash flow management, debt management, and behavior. And we also deliver financial wellness to groups of employees, leveraging those same tools and skills, and just delivering it in a way that somebody can learn for themselves. So we have two types of markets that we help.
Right. That's amazing. And you assist clients. Well, the program assists clients across the country, all over Canada, U.S. as well, or just Canada?
Yeah, Canada and the U.S. So we don't have a huge presence in the U.S. Our focus is definitely Canada, but we have some great U.S. financial professionals who are just as keen to help their clients improve their cash flow and get more life from their money. So we support those folks as well.
Right. And I think what really intrigued Ryan and I, when we came across your offering, was the fact that it's more behavioral cash flow. I mean, we can kind of get into what that really means, as opposed to just strict budgeting. I mean, I've been in the industry for, 34 years, and initially we started with assisting clients with budgets, right? People who are struggling, and there was a very low success rate. Quickly realized it was no different than dieting, right? Yep. Everyone starts off excited and they're going to do it, and they have the discipline. They feel good about, collecting those toonies in the jar. But then after, about 2 or 3 months, the excitement isn't at the same level. And all of a sudden there's a sense of deprivation. And sometimes they kind of blow up their budgeting, by buying a boat or a big screen TV or whatever, and actually put themselves in a worse situation than when they first started. So I know I kind of moved from trying to help people with budgeting to maybe using cash flow more as a tool for awareness. Just be aware of where your money is going.
Mhm.
I think I've shared this with Ryan in the past. When the iPad first came out, and I'm a big, huge techie guy, I wanted to figure out a way to justify, buying that iPad, and was $800. And every day at the time, I would go to the local coffee shop in the morning and get a coffee and a newspaper, and it was always pocket change, right? It was
Mm.
like $2.50 a day, and that's how I viewed it. But then when I actually tracked it to be aware of what the cost was over the year, well, it was over $800 on average, right? And I never viewed it or saw it as $800. I only viewed it as pocket change. So that helped me realize, well, I'm going to stop doing that, for example, and buy my iPad and have my
Mhm.
coffee in the morning from home. And I started to use that strategy with my clients. But again, it only takes you so far.
Mhm.
And if we kind of use the diet analogy, a lot of times they talk about lifestyle changes, right? That's ultimately how you're going to achieve your goals, is by making some lifestyle changes. And the behavioral cash flow planning is very similar to the lifestyle changes someone would have to go through. So can you maybe speak to a little bit more why behavioral cash flow planning may be better suited for most people, and why budgets don't tend to work in some cases or in most cases?
Yeah, so I think the issue, like the issue's got a lot of issues. There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
problems that lead to budgeting being difficult. And I think if we look to just kind of the current environment, right, when we saw the idea of budgeting created, it was more feasible because people only had cash. And that was a very natural way of managing resources because there really was no choice. And today we live in a world where we have access to credit, overdraft, and many more transactions. So if we just think about the environment, that's our first problem. I'll give you a really specific example. My mother will not probably check out this podcast, so we can say this. She was born in 1944,
Okay.
and she got home from the hospital by being laid across the front seat, and my grandfather put his hand on her belly, and that was totally cool. That's how
Yeah.
they drove her home.
Yeah.
But when I had my son in 2007, if I took him home from the hospital, I would get arrested.
Right.
But a car seat, a safe car seat, and you can't buy them used. You're not allowed to buy them
Yeah.
used. A safe car seat is $300. So we're not living in an environment where everything we truly need is necessarily affordable in a given month. So we have to use credit sometimes. And we live in a world where we really can't buy our homes with cash, at least most of us can't. So we're in a completely different environment. That's our first problem. But I think the big problem for most people to adopt a budget and stick to it is it's awfully complicated, right? Most budgets that do work, and technically budgeting works, people just won't do it for very long. Like if you actually do it, it works, but it's just not feasible to stick to. But the issue, unless you're using jars and envelopes and cash, is you end up with too many things moving around. And the problem with jars and envelopes and cash is people won't do that long term. When we create extra effort in order to manage our spending, we create friction in the wrong place. So budgeting can be very effective for things that have a beginning and an end, like holiday spending or going to a birthday party or going on a vacation,
Mm-hmm.
because you only have to make the effort for so long and there's only so many transactions. But when you're talking about day to day living, coffee, eating out, groceries are probably the highest risk expense that we have. Costco, all the million things coming at us from every direction on our phones. The idea that we can manually manage all of that is unlikely if we have to do it ad infinitum for many, 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 many transactions a month. So when I looked to try and help people manage their cash flow, I took the exact same approach as you. I was like, oh, I know what to do. Put these people on a budget. I'll
Yeah.
show them. And then I tried that, and people stuck to it for a little while. They felt good at first, but after probably a month or so, there's a lot of arguing and complaining and getting off track. And when people don't get a win from making a behavioral change, they give up. And so I just found it wasn't functional. And in my own household, as a financial professional, and I was very early in my career when I was playing with this, and my own income was extremely volatile. But I found it was even hard for me to do, and I can be pretty fastidious. So I said to my husband, like, we're going to be the guinea pigs. We're going to try things out, and then I'm going to get the clients that want me to help them with this to try them too. And then we just started recording all the results. What we found is there's certain expenses in our lives that are high risk, and they're high risk because they're high frequency, they're high volatility. The price changes a lot. People think gasoline is volatile. Pay close attention to the price of red peppers. That's volatile.
Okay.
And variability. Like when we can go into like Walmart's an extra dangerous place because there's so many things we can buy, and our grocery stores are not much different. So when I realized that if we could just control the things that are the most risk to hurt us and simplify the action of taking control over that for the client, wait a minute, this works, and it keeps working, especially when we tie spending efforts to short-term goals. Those things you just said, bust up people's budget, buying a big screen TV or going on a vacation. Those are the perfect motivation to staying on track. And so those two areas, making it more easy to watch your spending by separating it and keeping those high risk expenses in one place, and then tying it to a goal that is a high risk behavior if we don't do it with a plan. Those two things leverage people's natural behaviors and help them work in their own best interest. Because a lot of our natural behaviors, were created to help us run away from something that's trying to eat us. The financial system has way more nuances than the things we try to escape as we evolved in the past.
Right.
I think the psychology of money is one of the biggest things, and just being able to set people off in the right mindset when it comes to money. And we've talked about this, and I talk often with clients, understanding their past traumas with money and how they grew up and how it's sometimes embedded in our DNA, and how working with the right advisor can help bring awareness. And that's one of the activities that we often do, is just, not necessarily budgeting, as Jim and I have had lengthful conversations about whether they work or not. And you made a great point, which is these shorter term goals are great for setting a budget. But for the longer haul, the coin jars and stuff, sometimes do it with young people because it's fun for them to see what money looks like. And also it allows them the opportunity of physically seeing money go from one place to another, because we live in such a electronic society that, what is cash? Most people see the debit cards and credit cards. So any behavior things that you've noticed with clients that you worked with that really pushes them forward when it comes to understanding their own psychology?
So certainly in the research that we've reviewed in the many years that I've focused in this area of finance, present bias tends to be the biggest, most prominent behavior that tends to take humans off track with money. Mm-hmm. And present bias is that tendency to put what we can have today ahead in personal value or immediate feeling of value over what we can have tomorrow. So it's one of the reasons it's so hard for us to save for retirement. We really aren't geared to envision ourselves 30 years from now. We're geared to keep ourselves happy in the moment. Mm-hmm. And so present bias is the big one. And present bias is also connected to that short-term goal idea. So when we're talking about short-term goals, we mean something that's emotional and something that costs money. And I know some people will say, oh, my credit cards are stressing me so bad. Paying off my credit card is my short-term goal. Paying off your credit card is a great debt repayment goal, but it's not a very effective short-term goal. If it was, we'd see the credit card companies on the news crying about how they don't make any profit because everybody pays their card off. That's not a natural human behavior. A natural human behavior is to go buy the big screen TV or go to coffee every day or do these behaviors that add up and create credit card debt. So the short-term goal allows us to harness our present bias, and it allows us to focus on something we can have soon enough to feel value. So about 6 to 18 months out, any more than that, and it feels way too long term.
Yeah.
The other thing, and it's the same as that visualization you said about somebody can see money and how valuable that can be. Yes, people can see coins and bills add up, although most people can't look at a pile of money and know how much is there. So sometimes it can lose its impact a little bit in that way. But if you've got a savings account set up for that short-term goal and you're watching that amount increase every single month, your proximity to your short-term goal is palpable. Yeah. So you feel that sense of progress, which is really important. When you're saving for retirement, even though you're making progress every single month, you can't really feel it. You've got to get 20, sometimes 25 years in before you turn around and go, oh, wow, look what I did. I did all of this myself. And with a short-term goal, we want to be able to do that much faster. Mm-hmm. And we want to use that present bias. So that's a big one. Another one that we see a lot that triggers spending behavior is something we'll see in the really big box stores. Where we'll get a little bit of a distraction impact. So we'll see that when we walk out of one of the big box stores, if you look at your receipt, the amount you saved is in huge font. Yeah. And the amount you paid is in teeny tiny font. This store looks like a warehouse. So your brain is going, I must be getting a really good deal because there's nothing fancy in here. They haven't spent their money on fanciness. They've made the cost of the goods lower. This is a great place for me to save money. But in reality, we've looked at a lot of people's spending data, and I can tell you the stores that you walk into, and no matter how much money you saved, you come up with a cart that has $300 worth of stuff. Mm-hmm. Typically, you're spending more on food or in that type of store in a year, caused by that impact of seeing how much I saved, associating my surroundings with being frugal, and then coming out with all these things, thinking I have value, but not really looking at the big picture. So separating that, yeah, the $500 store. So separating that spending account really helps somebody still stay within what's reasonable for their income and their stage of life, versus using how much I'm saving to trigger what's okay to spend. That's a very slippery slope.
Right. I think the one thing that I liked about the program as well is it's not about restricting anyone or, just saying, no, you can't do this or have one less coffee a week or whatever it is. Because again, even with Ryan and I and working with our clients, we would always say to them, we're not here to tell you what, not to do, like not to enjoy whatever. Because the reality of it is, there are people who will save, expecting to enjoy it in retirement, for example, which could be 20, 30 years out. And they reach retirement and 6 months later have a heart attack and pass away. So they've missed out on a lot of opportunities throughout the years. Then you have the other extreme where it's just like people saying, don't know when I'm going to go, so I'm just going to enjoy it all now. And then they reach retirement. And at that point, they realize, wow, I'm really healthy and probably have 30 years left, and I put nothing aside. Mm-hmm. For us, it's always about the balance, trying to find the balance between the two. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think, again, this program allows clients to have a bit of both worlds, right? Mm-hmm. So I think at this point it'd be, the right opportunity for us to announce that TVH Financial has launched TVH CacheFlo Solutions in partnership. Ryan and I are partners in the new company. So it's an addition to what we currently do. It's available to a lot of our existing clients and also people who are not currently working with TVH Group and Financial. We are going to be making it available to a lot of our external clients. So we're really excited about it. Ryan, anything else you want to add?
No, again, right from the beginning of talking with Steph and understanding what she's built and the learning part of this business, which has always been
Yeah.
important for us, Jim, is
Yeah.
making people aware and also educating at the same time. So it really made a wonderful kind of fit for us to go
Mm.
through it. And I'm really excited to talk more with clients and work with you, Steph and Jim, and really help as many people as possible, really. And that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Because, helping people set a goal and see the progress and kind of the joy and happiness that people can. And, with my son, for instance, walking through a grocery store, a dollar store, it can be hard for parents and wanting to grab up all those little things, but kind of teaching him at a young age, what is a bigger goal that he wants? It's 6 months or a year, and often it's we want to travel somewhere or experience something. So it's, can we put aside this $1 or $2 item to build towards that goal, right? So, and I think through the learning tools that clients will get along there's a lot of great takeaways that they can hopefully share with their friends and family, and build a better education to money and their mindset in comparison to what we've really been given in our life, which is very little, unless you're out there reading and being involved. And I just want to encourage people to get involved in their own financial wellness. And this is a great stepping stone for it. And yeah.
And I think where we've recognized the gap in our industry, I can speak to Canada, not south of the border, is we have a lot of financial planning programs and tools and resources, but none of them do a good job when it comes to cash flow.
Yeah.
Again, it's more perhaps an awareness where people will plug in their cash flow information. And what I'll say, even in my experience in the past, when someone wanted to work on their cash flow, that was the information was very difficult to gather from people. Right? It was very easy for them to provide us with their RSP balances and statements and whatever else. But when it came down to what are you spending on a month-to-month basis, and let's look at a 3-month average, for example, that was always the most difficult information it was for us to gather from people. So I think it is a really good opportunity now to be able to offer cash flow behavioral cash flow planning, and potentially tie that with the long-term plans that a lot of people are looking to achieve, including insurance planning, which is something that we do as well, and investment planning. So we're excited because we think this is a great opportunity. And I think now more so than ever, there is a need for people to complete a behavioral cash flow plan. I mean, I know clients today, because of the current environment, are literally taking cash advances from their credit cards to make a mortgage payment. So even now, trying to sit down with a client to talk about 30 years from now, they're worried about how are they going to pay their mortgage next month? How are they going to put food on the table the next couple of weeks? So I really think that this is a really good opportunity for us to offer this service to people that are out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, the saying that always comes true, and I think it's Tony Robbins that said, the change happens when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change, right? And this is, for a lot of people, this can be really the tipping point for a lot of people and their families, and think about their families and their children and the next generation of how this and learning this kind of cash flow can really affect change for yourself today and for generations, right? So change your DNA right here. So
Yeah. Yeah, and we're going to be offering the service as either a subscription model or an annual fee to keep you on track with the behavioral cash flow planning. And if you have any questions in terms of cost and pricing, you can reach out to Ryan and I. We can help you with that. But in saying all that, Stephanie, it's not for everybody, right? There are some cases where it's just not going to help a person. So maybe can you help us go through where it might not help an individual going through this process?
I sure can. Yeah. I mean, nothing is for everybody. So if any other than oxygen, if anyone says, this is for everyone, every solution doesn't help every person. So circumstances where cash flow planning is not going to make a significant difference. If somebody is in a position where they really need to consider a consumer proposal or bankruptcy, cash flow planning alone is typically not going to fix that scenario. And these things can happen when somebody experiences a sudden loss of income for an extended period of time, or extreme increases in interest rates, which some people are experiencing now, or a combination of the two. And the great thing about the way you'll collect the data from clients that are looking for cash flow advice is, one, it should only take about 10, maybe 20 minutes. And the stuff they really need to worry about is what we would call committed cash flow. So things like their mortgage payment and their RSP, the stuff you said earlier, it's easy for them to know that. If they don't know exactly how much they spent on groceries in the last 6 weeks, it really doesn't matter. And that data is almost impossible for most people to figure out without a forensic accountant. So because there's going to be a recommendation made. So there's some structure there. So for people who may not get a lot of advanced help from a cash flow plan, if they're needing consumer proposal or bankruptcy, the cash flow plan is a great strategy for after that has happened, so that they can use that relief they've received to get ahead instead of putting themselves back in that scenario later on. But also, when we look at somebody's data, if they've got no ability to free up cash flow, that tells us that their committed expenses are too high. It means their mortgage payment is too high. They have too many car payments. And that is not something they can solve with changes to day-to-day spending. So that could be super frustrating to somebody, to the extent that they may just want to give up. But the fact that we can see that so quickly means you can at least help somebody understand what the potential next step might be, even if a cash flow plan alone isn't enough. For some people, that'll be refinancing. For others, it may mean bigger things like downsizing or dropping a vehicle or something like that. But at least you can tell what's possible. But for the most part, most working adults that are not on track to need bankruptcy services are often going to free up at least some money by employing a cash flow plan. On the other end of the spectrum, I would say people who have, $10-20 million liquid assets and no debt, and they hardly spend any money, they probably don't need a cash flow plan.
Right.
But the majority of Canadians are in the window, working Canadians are in the window where a cash flow plan is probably going to benefit them. And from the financial professionals we work with, like, we're not talking about freeing up $50 from buying less coffee. We're talking about making a fundamental shift in how you structure your spending behavior so that you're freeing up $800 a month, $1,000 a month, $2,000 a month. That's not unusual. So this is not like a teeny tiny painful change to get almost no gain. This is a really impactful shift that can really help people, but it's definitely not for everybody. The good news is you can find out if it's going to help you really quickly.
Right. Okay. And then part of the program, it offers a 12 module educational piece as well. So would you say if someone who really won't benefit today from a behavioral cash flow plan, are the 12 modules alone a good starting point for them? Would that be beneficial? Is there value there for them?
Absolutely, because it can help them understand where their gaps are. So again, if somebody puts in all of their information and there's no automatic way to free up cash flow, it can help them understand that it's those things like their property tax, their mortgage payment, the big things that take more work but don't change frequently, for them to consider changing. They also get some guidance on setting goals, on figuring out what types of spending behavior is higher risk versus lower risk, why budgeting might not be functional for them. It takes them through quite a bit. And the lessons are little tiny snippets, 5-15 minutes, and you learn something important about your finances, and you have a way to see if you can apply it to yourself. So certainly, folks who are looking at potential cash flow planning and it's just not quite right for them yet, having the support of being able to create a financial profile and go through that e-learning pathway can certainly help them get themselves to the point where a cash flow plan could make a big difference.
Right. Or if they were trying to get all their financial advice through TikTok and that just hasn't worked for them, this is another way that they can actually gain some education. Yeah, that's good. Well, then let's talk about a little bit about maybe the process and the steps that you've created and what we would put a client through. So there's a TVH CacheFlo ebook that's available that speaks to the 7 different mindsets. I did go through that. I was surprised what my result was, to be honest with you. And then there's the actual money mindset quiz, and that takes about 5 to 10 minutes. So we would definitely encourage people to go through the quiz. And in the description of our podcast and YouTube channel, we're going to have a landing page where people will be able to download the ebook for free and also complete that money mindset quiz. So people would go through that process, and then they could sign up for, let's call it, or let's let them know about the Winton app. So that's something we haven't talked about yet. So maybe you can speak to the Winton app and, how that will benefit clients in terms of data gathering and keeping on track.
Sure. So I can address both those things. The money mindsets. So sometimes people think, oh, there's like good and bad money mindsets. I want to be this one, or I aspire towards that one. Nope. They're not good. They're not bad. They're just how you tend to be with financial decisions.
Yeah.
So the money mindsets are on a control scale from the most controlled and controlling, which we call the brick wall, to the least controlled and controlling, which we call the optimist. Not everybody is the same in their financial decision making about all aspects of finance, but that behavior does tend to run through them. And sometimes people will say to us, I don't know if that's really my result. I don't think I'm that mindset. And then I ask them, we say, how about you ask somebody in your life, read them the description of that mindset and see if they think, because we get a lot of responses. Oh yeah, no, totally. But that's because they think one's better and they're not, they're just how we are.
Right.
And it's about understanding each other too, right? And especially when it comes to couples and families, and that creates some great dialogue. I'm sure as you were putting this together with your husband, you had some great debates as to each other and where you sat and how you can work together and make it to your advantage, right? Instead of just hiding behind whatever you fall upon, right? So,
well, the natural conflict that exists when our mindsets, especially the further apart on the control scale our mindsets are, there's a natural conflict because you have absolutely opposing views on how to make financial decisions. And that is impossible to solve if you're not aware of why the other person is motivated to think one way versus the way you think. So knowing your money mindset for your own situation, for your own self, and then if you've got a partner or spouse that you have to cooperate making financial decisions with, understanding where their mindset is and where you relate on that control scale can really give you a good talk track as a couple. It can also help you with strategies. If you're both really low on the control scale, then you want more automation, more automated savings. You want to have short-term goals that are super shiny and really exciting, and you want the whole family on board. Whereas the other end of the control scale is going to say, oh, that's kind of fluffy. Like, I want a short-term goal, but like, I want the rules. What is the structure? I will follow it. So understanding that's really crucial. So you guys have your own money mindset quiz. Somebody can figure out their money mindset and then download that ebook and get more information to understand not only themselves, but anybody else they're making financial decision with. And then Winton is the app that you're able to work with your clients through to provide them cash flow advice, as well as give them access to e-learning and support to improve their cash flow situation. So the Winton app is a progressive web app. So that means you don't get it at the Google Play Store. You don't download it from the App Store. It's available through your organization for people who are working with you in that place of cash flow planning. And it's a progressive web app, so it can be used on any device. So if you hate dealing with these kinds of things on a teeny tiny phone, don't worry. You can use it on your laptop. You can use it on your desktop. It allows someone to securely share their current financial situation with somebody who's helping them with their cash flow. And it allows the spendable number to be overridden. If you've got a family where everything's really tight, you might want to adjust the spendable number. If you have a family where they've met every financial goal and they just don't want to blow all their money, so they want to know, like, how do I keep on track so I don't backslide? You may want to increase their spendable number, so you have the ability to do that. It's not something you use every day. It's not something that yells at you from your pocket and tells you you're not allowed to drink coffee.
Right.
It's literally for assessing and for updating. And it's really easy to use and a really easy way for financial professionals to collaborate with their clients and help them free up cash flow to fund the things that really matter.
Right.
Yeah.
So someone who wants to start the process with TVH CacheFlo Solutions, again, just a reminder. So they have the Money Mindset quiz. That's very helpful and I'd say almost necessary. They'd have the ebook that they would have access to. They would have the Winton app, which will provide them with the 12 modules, educational modules, as well as, again, helping them understand between committed and spendable. And then once they've gone through that process, then they would book a quick 15, 20-minute call to basically say, yes, there's something that we can do for you here in terms of the behavioral cash flow plan, or not able to help you right now, and there's maybe some hard decisions to make, correct? Those are the steps that someone would go through.
Yes, exactly. And the time invested to do that is very limited. What it helps you do and what it helps the individual do is get from, I don't know if I could be doing better, to, aha, these are the things I can and can't fix. And here are my options for next steps.
Right.
So it shouldn't take a huge amount of time, but it really makes it easier for an individual to recognize opportunities to make changes and for a financial professional to give advice people can actually act on. Creating a financial plan is pretty useless if the person can't actually do any of the things you recommend.
Right.
So that combination is really important. But it's very easy, and it takes a very quick call with someone like yourself to take somebody through and double check things that might be an error. Sometimes people will put in their property tax and it says $3,500 a month,
Right.
and that doesn't look right, and they meant annual. So sometimes there's just quick little things you need to clarify to free up that cash flow, and other times it allows you to see, okay, going too far with this isn't going to help you, but making these little changes might, and then come back to us when you're in this scenario and we can take it from there. So it really gives you a very quick triage of whether you can help or not. And for anyone considering doing that, creating a profile and filling that out, the effort to find out if you can get further than you are right now with your money is small, and the impact could be significant. So it's a really good exercise for anyone who's thinking, I would like to figure out if I can do more with the resources I have.
Yeah.
Part of me thinks that we should make sure that we implement this with the government officials before they run for office, that they have to run through this program with us, Jim, to make sure they're fiscally responsible.
Right.
So before they even run for office, and then when they're office, run the same thing. Anyway, sorry.
There's lots of bad behavior there. That's the problem.
Yeah.
So here's another question, because we've been talking about different life stages. Do retirees need a cash or behavioral cash flow plan?
Oh, yes.
Right.
You don't need to worry about your cash flow when you're no longer responsible for paying for anything.
Right.
So when you're probably at the point where you're a minor, or when you're no longer drawing oxygen, or not responsible for yourself, those are the windows where you don't really need to think about cash flow. For retirees, though, the use of a cash flow plan may be different. First of all, we have a huge number of Canadian retirees who are still carrying debt.
Right.
So they definitely need a cash flow plan, because every penny that goes out to interest is just compounding the erosion of their assets, and it could cut years off their ability to fund their retirement. So super crucial for that. But the other reason cash flow planning is really important for retirees is to help them properly assess their actual income need. This is important as we lead up to retirement, but it's equally important to spot check throughout retirement, usually at least once a year. So there's an exercise that you all have access to that would be really important for people that are nearing or in retirement. And it's called the retirement shift exercise. And that's where we help people go through typical expenses and think about, does this go up? Does this go down? Is it going to stay the same or is it going to go away? And I have done this exercise hundreds of times with rooms full of people.
Right.
And the murmurs are always the same. Oh no,
Yeah.
I didn't think about that. And when I ask for feedback, what did this exercise do for you? A lot of people say, why did I think I was going to spend so much less in retirement? Like, oh, I forgot property taxes will go up and the cost of goods will go up. Hopefully I don't have any debt. So that isn't maybe a risk for some, but we know statistically it's a probability for many. But there's so many times where in our lives we're taught that in retirement we're going to spend so much less. And yes, a 65-year-old 60 years ago probably did spend a lot less, but a 65-year-old today is like wanting to go to Greece and refinish the kitchen and go on adventures. And, a lot of us are still really healthy for a really long time. Yeah. So doing an exercise to check on our retirement income need before we retire and during retirement is really effective. And because we have that committed and spendable framework, you can really easily help somebody figure out what their actual retirement income need is and ensure that they have enough money that from day to day they feel comfortable. And when they want to go do some of the amazing things they dreamed of for retirement, they know they can. People who've saved lots sometimes feel like, am I safe to spend this? And people sometimes the answer is yes. And sometimes the answer is no. But without knowing your retirement cash flow need, it's very difficult to figure out what that is.
This is where we've identified a big gap in our practice because we help clients with retirement planning. Many of them are not that far off from retirement or are retired. And the question is always, how much income will I need? And, we have this formula of 70 or 80% of your current income or whatever that formula is. But we've never had really the ability to really identify this is what your cash flow needs are going to be once you retire. Yeah. And did we do everything to allow you to, be able to spend and have the cash to be able to deal with those expenses, right? So now the fact that we have this available, I think we're going to be able to help so many clients as they're approaching retirement or in retirement. And you've even recently created the retirement readiness quiz. So that's something that we'll also be able to send out to clients as a questionnaire. So can you just briefly speak about that?
Yeah, so in our work with employee groups, I still get the amazing opportunity to connect with real people about their finances because when I started down this path of creating education and technology, it meant I couldn't really serve somebody one-to-one anymore as an individual client. So it is a wonderful opportunity to be able to talk to people and to be able to understand what today's pre-retiree or newly retired person is caring about or worrying about. And so the retirement readiness quiz came about from some tools that we use to help employees assess their own retirement readiness, understanding what age you think you're going to take different benefits, the taxation of the different income types, whether you're on track to be debt-free at retirement or not, how early you want to retire. I mean, we were really sold the idea of Freedom 55, right. And some people are, that's not realistic because there are many people, if they retire at 55 or 60, may need to live another 35 or 30 years. Yeah. Well, if you only worked for 30 or 35 years and then you need to live for 30 or 35 years, like, did you save half your income? Like, right. That's a really long time. So the retirement readiness quiz allows somebody to plug in what they think they're on track for or their current scenario and see, is this a high probability of happening? Or am I way off and need a rejig? Or am I close, but maybe a little bit of adjustment? So just give somebody a sense of whether they're tracking on the right course or not. And it's, again, something that's only a few minutes, and allows them to get a sense of where they're headed.
I find especially with this quiz too, over the years, it's been especially people with pensions because they feel they're so secure with their pension, and having talked to larger groups that their pension companies aren't giving them the support that they need. So when they retire at that 55 or 60, they're like, yeah, I get to retire, I get my pension, but they realize all these tools that we're talking about today are really there to help support them and realize, are you truly ready for retirement? Because I've seen many people go and spend the first year and then they realize, I did not save. Was not prepared. I did not save enough. This pension that I thought was going to take care of me is not taking care of me and my family, or me and my loved one. So again, trying to encourage people, at every year to be able to do things like this, especially, you talked about the Freedom 55. Really, at 55, you should have a really solid plan before you retire, and likely 65. And some people wait later, and that's okay too. So, but yeah, it's very shocking the number of clients that I discuss with that are especially within the pensions, teachers and union workers and stuff like that aren't set up. So
yeah, we work with several groups who have very sizable pensions, but pensions are not a magic wand.
Yeah.
If you retire in debt, if you don't have the maximum service, if you retire early and you take your CPP early and you don't realize that your pension's integrated with CPP and your actual total income is going to drop at 65, if you don't realize that the types of incomes you built up in addition to your pension are all taxable, like all of these consequences. And this is not the job of the pension company to prepare people for. Their job is to explain the intricacies of the pension. And having co-hosted pension education with pension providers and those that administrate the programs, the information they give, I find, is often accurate, but it's not always easy to understand if you're just a regular person. And we work with groups where, some of the people that are employed are physicists and nuclear physicists and high-level engineers. There's no arguing that they're not intelligent, but it doesn't mean when the pension provider starts talking about superannuation that they necessarily know what they mean by that. So there's a lot of gaps, and individuals who have a pension are probably still best served to talk to a financial professional about what they have built around the pension and what the total reality will look like.
Yeah.
Well, we're quickly running out of time. So this has been fascinating. And Stephanie, thank you very much for joining us today and helping us to launch and introduce cash flow planning to our clients. So what I would say is this: for anyone who is looking for some additional information, they can actually visit www.tvhcacheflo.ca. So there's additional information there, or we can be reached at 647-727-4668. And Steph, for professionals who are hoping to add cash flow planning to their practice, how can they reach out to you and find you?
Absolutely. So they can always find me on LinkedIn. Stephanie Holmes-Winton there on LinkedIn. And I'm always happy to connect with professionals. We do a lot of webinars and free webinars with CE credits and all those fun things. Or they can check us out at cacheflo.co. And so that's CACHEFLO. When you're a tech company, you have to spell things funny.
Right.
.co. So CacheFlo, like a computer cache. No W on that O, .co. They can find us there, or like I said, they can find us on LinkedIn. We've got lots of materials for financial professionals, and we're always happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
That's great. Well, once again, thank you very much. We appreciate it. And everyone, have a wonderful rest of your day.